So Steve Borthwick has named his matchday 23 for England to take on the All Blacks this weekend as the autumn gets underway. He's gone early, which actually, to be fair, he's done on a couple of occasions already. I remember him doing it on the summer tour when England travelled to New Zealand. Now it is the All Blacks making the trip up into the Northern Hemisphere. Welcome back to the channel. This is the team that Steve Borthwick has gone with. Let me know what you make of it in the comments section. What are the big things that stand out for you? I'm going to go through it name by name and talk about it more generally, and also explain why I think this is a big autumn for England that could end up defining their season. I suppose one of the main things is continuity. When I look at this matchday 23, it is continuity, and it's something that Borthwick spoke about when he first became England head coach. England hadn't been a team that had enjoyed a huge amount of continuity in selection. Under Eddie Jones, he was pretty famed for players coming into squads or coming into training squads and chopping and changing, and that was something that as a new head coach, Steve Borthwick wanted to correct. And that's something that he's really focused on since he took up the job, and it continues here. I think the most obvious way that that is highlighted in this 23 is Henry Slade. Henry Slade starts in the centres despite the fact that his first game of the season was only at the weekend just gone. He had surgery in the summer. He's played once for Exeter, but he comes back in to maintain that midfield partnership of Ollie Lawrence alongside Slade. So I think continuity is a big thing. And I suppose more generally with Borthwick, when I look at this squad, there are a few players that I have question marks over, as many people might do, but overall I don't have any huge objections. A lot of what we see here, I think, makes sense. And I think there is a clarity to Borthwick's England selections, which again is not something we've always had. You might not necessarily agree with every single name that is on that sheet of paper, but I think we know where we stand. And I think that is a good thing for an England team that are building and are now looking to really cement their place as a side that are capable of consistently beating the best teams in the world. So overall, I'm excited by this team, and I'm really excited to see what they look like against the All Blacks for a team which has had quite a few changes in the coaching department as well. But let's go through it. So Ellis Genge, Jamie George and Will Stewart, the front row. Jamie George, we know, starts. He's England's best hooker. He has been for a while, plus he's the captain. Ellis Genge, likewise, sometimes we see him used as a replacement because of the impact he can have off the bench, but he's probably England's best loose head. I know Finn Baxter, who's on the bench, had a really impressive couple of test matches against New Zealand actually in the summer, but Ellis Genge starting I don't think is a huge shock. What is interesting in that front row is that it's Will Stewart on the tight head side, and we know tight head is probably England's weakest position, I think, really. Dan Cole is still there as kind of the reliable presence coming off the bench later on. We know England are in a position where they've got some really good young players that they think can have a bright future at this level at tight head, but they're not ready yet for international rugby. And so it is trying to, I suppose, patch things together until some of those players are ready to come into the team. Will Stewart has been on good form for Bath over the last few years. We've seen him play for England quite consistently. He gets the opportunity to start. The one other thing I would say with the front row, and I don't know if international coaches will be thinking this far ahead, but I think a lot of fans will be, and for me as someone that looks at things and tries to analyse it, is that England need to get their front row right ahead of facing the Springboks, and that rematch from that World Cup semi-final when the bench replacements changed the game for the Boks. England's scrum started going backwards, they conceded penalties, they lost that semi-final. When I look at that South Africa game, which is going to be a huge task, the toughest test for this England team this autumn, if they are to have a chance against them, their front row has to be in a right place. And I just wonder as well whether there's any part of this selection with half a mind thinking this could be what we do against the Boks. Genge and Stewart, can you hold the fort for the first 50, 60 minutes before Baxter and Dan Cole come on later? Maybe not, but it just kind of sprung to mind for me. Likewise, Maro Itoje, second row, we know he's going to start, and then it's George Martin alongside him. I think it would have probably been George Martin anyway. Ollie Chessum's injury, I think, cements that. And what Chessum's injury does also mean is it's Chandler Cunningham-South at 6. We wondered what England would do, because I think Chessum, Martin and Itoje were probably all going to start. I think England's best performances for the most part over the last kind of 12 months or so have been with those guys having a pretty major part to play. So without Chesham, who's been on great form, Cunningham South, who I think is a big game player. I think we've seen that for Harlequins. I think we've seen it for England already in what is a very young and early international career. So I've got no problems with him starting at 6. And I'm really excited to see Tom Curry return at 7 and Ben Earl at number 8. I think that has the potential to be a top quality back row for England. I've got no complaints against any of those players. I suppose with Tom Curry, it's injuries. This is the first match he's started for England for ages, I think since the World Cup last year, that bronze medal match against Argentina. First game he started at Twickenham in a couple of years, but we know how good he is when he's at his best. And his brother's on the bench as well, which is the first time they've both appeared in England matchday 23. So a big occasion for the family, I suppose. And then Ben Early's been England's best player over the last year or longer, really. The one other thing actually on this graphic, which I might as well mention now, because 3 of the players that I've gone through are vice-captains, and then you've got a 4th vice-captain in George Ford on the bench. Kind of intrigued by that. I think it's probably one of those things that doesn't mean that much. It's interesting to me that they've highlighted it. I think it's probably just part of the wider leadership group and highlighting who those players are. But it does look a little strange to have your captain and 3 vice-captains highlighted on the team sheet in your pack, and then a vice-captain in terms of the backline in George Ford on the bench. But that is something that I've seen a few people mentioning and talking about. Overall, though, for me, it's a pretty good starting pack, isn't it? Apart from the concerns in the front row for England and the props, particularly on the tight head side, Chesham would play, I think, if he wasn't there, which means Cunningham South, I think, would be on the bench. I think it's a pretty strong-looking starting pack for England. Let's talk about the halfbacks, though, because that is interesting as well. Ben Spencer starts, a man who made his England debut years ago but has 6 caps to his name. He got flown out for the World Cup final in 2019, was jet-lagged and ended up coming off the bench to play in that game. He has had, frankly, a bizarre international career. And I'm really pleased that he gets this opportunity. When Alex Mitchell was injured, who has been the England starting scrum half, the natural successor, I think, was Ben Spencer. And I think he deserves this. He has been brilliant for Bath over the last few years. He was brilliant for Saracens for a long time as well, but was always behind Richard Wigglesworth. So never really got as much of an opportunity with England. So him at 9 and Marcus Smith keeps the 10 jersey. I wondered whether George Ford would come straight back in, which is crazy because he picked up the injury. He hasn't played for what's it been? Last 3 rounds in the Prem? Maybe more, but around that number. So Ford on the bench intrigues me, but Marcus Smith, he was the starting fly half in New Zealand, and he gets the opportunity to go again and make that shirt his own, alongside Spencer, which I think is an exciting halfback combination. I've mentioned the centres already, it's continuity. I feel a little uneasy about that, in all honesty, just purely because of the amount of game time that Henry Slade has had. As I said at the top of the video, at least there's clarity there. I think we can understand why Borthwick has gone with it at least. But I do think because of his lack of rugby he's played, I find that intriguing when you've got, say, an Alex Lazowski who's looked very, very good so far this season, whether he could have slotted into those centres. But that's who he's gone with, Lawrence and Slade. And then the back 3, again, I've got no complaints. Freeman, Faye, Waboso, Furbank. I think they've been England's best back 3 and starting back 3 over the last 12 months. I have seen some people suggest that Freddie Stewart, in terms of form, is the best fullback at the moment. Probably got a case there, to be fair, but I just think Furbank has been very, very good for England, and I think he better suits the game plan of an England team that are looking to attack more. Not that Freddie Stewart can't attack, I just think Furbank is better suited to that. As for the bench, Theo Dan, replacement hooker, as he has been. Finn Baxter I mentioned, Dan Cole I mentioned. Ben Curry I've mentioned as well. The question marks for me, actually, with this England team is Nick Sikwe and Alex Dombrandt. And a part of this is because of the Chesham injury. So if Chesham's fit, he starts. I think Cunningham South then comes onto the bench. Maybe that knocks Dombrandt out. I think it's more with the Sikwe and Dombrandt. They've been around for a little while without ever having, I think, looked truly test level. Dombrandt's been brilliant for Harlequins, don't get me wrong, and he has actually had some decent moments for England, but I think not enough. So I've got a question mark over him and I've got a question mark over Nick Asikwe, particularly when you consider that part of the reason England lost to the All Blacks in the summer was their bench not having as big an impact as the All Blacks bench. That is a big role for someone like Nick Asikwe, if he's coming on in that second row, to have a big impact. He has to. Is he going to? That's my question. Harry Randall at replacement scrum half, either him or Jack Van Portfleet. I'm pleased for him. He will inject pace into the game. Honestly, I think you could have gone with either of those players because they've both been on good form to start the season. And George Ford, similar to with Henry Slade, I have questions over purely because of the injury, but there's no doubting the quality and the experience he'll bring into that 10 jersey late on in the game, hopefully steering the ship towards an England victory, but we'll wait and see. The final thing I'll say in this video is this is a big autumn for England. What is it? Played 4, won 4 this year so far, improving performances, but they need more results against the big teams under their belt, and that starts this weekend, plus the Wallabies and the Springboks and then Japan to come. England need, I think, to be winning at least 3 of those games for us really to see a sign of the progress that I think the players and the coaches and the fans will all be hoping for. It's a big autumn, and this is the England 23. What do you make of it? Put your comment down below. Make sure you like the video as well. I'd really appreciate that. And subscribe to the channel. Really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button so you do not miss a thing. Appreciate you watching the video. I look forward to reading your comments. I'll see you in the next one.